Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 12 Puzzles podcast. It's November. We're in New York. Joining me is Douglas from New York.
Hey,
What's up,
nice to be
man?
here. Hey, brother.
And we're waiting on Mark. Well, what we were discussing right before we went live is, I was looking at the book today and I was like, because I'm the closest to St. Augustine. And I'm like, when I looked in the back of the book, at the directory for the ferries, on 221 and 222, there's no Spanish ferry listed. And I never noticed that.
Yeah, you're
And
absolutely right.
I was
Right.
like, whoa, so area of origin when you look through all them. And I was like, okay, so is Byron using which a way he likes to hide stuff for people that are new to the book is some of them will say Russian, whatever, but then you get these areas where it says Middle East Persian. These aren't actual countries; these are areas.
Area.
So
Well,
he
he may be
with
using
that
Spain
story,
to cover
yeah.
it.
So
Yeah,
within that
yeah.
area, he's hiding. Is it Egypt? Is it Iraq? Is it
Absolutely.
Turkey?
Yeah, because you want to try to include everything. He's not a magician,
Yeah. The joke fiend, he uses Eastern European. He uses Celtic, which, pretty much it. The Hounds of News is Celtic, and the Household Unfamiliars is Norris. So there's two things. Where are Norris people from? So that's Scandinavian. Norris and Celtic is going to be Irish, Scottish.
Yeah,
But with
and they invaded that area, so it makes sense.
So Spain would be uh, Eastern European. It's southeast East Europe or Southwest Europe, and I was like, no, that's in there. And then the other thing I figured out, I don't know, and this is the kind of stuff I'm like, how did I never notice this? So if you go to page 10, and it's listing all the ferries and with the map and the elves and everything, and you figure out, just looking at the map, you're like, okay, so that's Ireland. I see Ireland, England, Scotland, Iberia, which is Spain. So not shown is Prince Yai, Shishin, and the dragon. So when I started looking at that, I said, okay, so if you go back to 221, 222, you see Chinese, but if you actually look at those words there, one of them's Japanese, hence the Japanese version of the book. So there's two Asian ferries. And the Japanese ferry is not listed in the back on 221 or 222. But I know the Japanese has something to do with New York, but these are just ferries that you're required to use with the puzzle because of historical connections. But they don't particularly, there is no primary, there is one primary Asian cask and gem, which is the Pearl of San Francisco. But I was like, oh, okay. So basically, I haven't really done the research, but when it says not shown, I think some of these names are going to be Japanese. I know the dragon is both. I mean, that's just dragon's just a mythology of Japan, period, which is basically a snake.
Yeah.
But that stuff, I was like, I'm looking through that. So you got two Florida stories, but the Florida stories are Chinese European in the Warner von Browning. And then the Garden Goyle is African, Nebraska, Florida area concentration. Nebraska's because of farming. You'll learn about that in the early history of the migration west when they said, hey, we need to find areas for farmland and all that stuff. But Florida, but I was like, there's no Spanish. There is no Spanish listed ferry at all. And I was like, so it seems like he's going through great he's hiding the details of the Florida puzzle like more than any other for some odd reason. And I got to go and hey, here's more research I got to do. That I don't want to do.
The Florida puzzle I really see as like it's based on surrealism, and JJP is a surrealist artist, and I connect Picasso to that. So it would be deeper. You know what I mean? It would have a lot of hidden meaning, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, everybody's throwing their little niche in there. I found stuff with sculptors that are obviously, all these people in the book. Byron used them for a reason. He's getting a lot of ideas from these people.
Absolutely.
When Karen John did her podcast with John Pyrad and Ben Asen, he talked about we had this meeting and they were discussing stuff. And that's also why he had these people sign the NDAs. You're not going to talk about this because, it's like the Sean Kelly thing. He's a humorist, he's a jokester, he's a writer. He's like, when he wrote in that book, it's in Toronto, he's screwing with everybody.
Yes.
And I think he knows where it's really at, but he just, it's like,
He wrote for
some,
Mad. You can never, you know?
yeah, yeah. And so everybody chases that. And I think that's exactly what he wanted to do. But
Yes.
like I told everybody, yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about Montreal. This is November, New York. My opinion on the book in New York, this is the final puzzle. This is the holy grail of the puzzle
Yes.
of the secret book. This is the hardest puzzle. I believe the puzzles actually start with the time, which would make New Orleans the first one, 12 o'clock. I think that's a little more deception there because people are thinking, oh, December's 12, that's the last. No. New York. This New York puzzle encompasses, God, almost every. And this is another theory I'm going off too. I almost think that there's a little bit of every single fairy in every single puzzle, even though some of that stuff is got nothing to do with finding the treasure box. You still need 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, or 12 of them. And then there's countless fairies in the story. I think there's 76 of them.
Yeah.
Some of
You
them
know,
attached.
I've seen evidence of that, so I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the difficulty level when you start getting into this, and I'm still trying to find. There is no X. So if anybody's going, if you find these certain points, like in Milwaukee, where he says at its southern foot treasure awaits, that's basically telling you it's right there. But what is that southern foot of what? Is that a foot? Is that a footer, like a concrete slab? You don't know. That's the stuff you gotta decipher even at the end.
Yeah.
Because I recently got in. I basically skipped a whole bunch of crap in Milwaukee, and basically was like, you know what, that that wonder, in Milwaukee, which, man, when the hell was Milwaukee? That Wonderstone's hearth. Wonderstone is used in fireplaces and in earliest lighthouses before burning oil lamps and electricity, of course. That's what was up there, like in Lord of the Rings. It was a big fire beacon. So if you're going to build a tower like the first, there's Milwaukee's got a little Egyptian in there, and that's because they actually had the first lighthouse ever built in one of the harbors there. And that whole area, even back then, if you're going to build a fireplace on something, you got to have, like today, if you build a house, they use fire brick. Back in the day, you had to use these volcanic Wonderstones that were able to withstand all that heat and not crumble and break. So that's what they would have had when he says on the tall, proud fifth. Fifth is also a reference to the lenses of a lighthouse, depending on how far they needed the light to go. So if it's on the ocean, it was a lower number. It was like a first, second, or third, I believe. I think it was fourth, fifth, and sixth were like for river entrances and harbors, which would, exactly be what the one in Milwaukee was being used for. Something close to the shore. But I just focus in on the lighthouse. And I remember John Michael was talking about the lighthouse all the time. Of course, the bridge is there with the 8-line heads.
Yes.
The ravine trail is a path that you take. They both basically go southeast over rock and soil, but then when you come up on the back side and you come around, there's the lighthouse. The bridges are right behind it. That's the one that says Southern Foot. I was always thinking like there's going to be a statue somewhere, and hey, this dude's foot's on the south side. Boom, there it is. but it could be
Yeah.
the footer now. And that south side of that lighthouse is
Mhm.
opposite of the lighthouse keeper's home. So if you go on that opposite side of that house, boom, that's the southern foot of it.
And everything's
So
still the same. Like nothing changed from back then over there.
no, the only thing I see there is there's some of these they're like these steel tube bumpers, you know, that they're around the lighthouse, and I guess that's in case a car rolled up there, it hit the bumper instead of hitting the lighthouse.
Yeah.
But I I did I was like, you know what, I'd like to find something before I go into the one puzzle that I really haven't dove into, which is Milwaukee, because there's so much crap all over the place, and I'm like, okay, the beer's over here, the automobiles are over there. It's just a bunch of, and I said, you know what? This is basically just a bunch of history of Milwaukee. The automobiles, the beer, the German influence of Milwaukee. And I was like, this really isn't going anywhere. There's a little bit of World War II, Douglas MacArthur. I tell you what, the cat and Douglas MacArthur, he's mentioned, and his statue used to be at that other place, and I recently seen where they're supposed to be renovating that. So I was like, if it was out there in those planters that are all around where his statue was, I said, uh-oh. I think if that's the place, but the fact that all those clues to, a proud, tall fifth is the lens, tall is what you would reference a lighthouse. They got all kinds of words you can attach to lighthouses, but of course it's tall. So, and it has to be because it's a lighthouse.
Mark's in there.
But I was like, is the fifth got anything to do with the damn lighthouse? And of course, the lens.
Yeah.
And I was like, geez. All the things. I thought you're thinking a fifth of like beer, or a
fifth of
mixed
Jack.
I the whole time I was thinking, no, like a fifth of whiskey. No. That makes sense with the alcohol and and it's like, oh, a fifth reference to the lighthouse lens. And that's hidden, so that lighthouse definitely has something to do about it. It would be nice as hell if John Michael was around, because I'd really like to pick his brain at this point.
That would be nice. There'd be some more integrity in this game. Hey, Mark is messaging me.
Yeah, I could see him. I was just making him sit there. What's up, Mark?
I'll tell you what.
What the hell was for dinner, man?
What
was for dinner?
We had to go do a little celebration dinner.
Why? Okay.
Oh, why?
Yeah, it's the day.
Yeah, I mean, you're making me wait there. I mean, I'm already beaten up from the results yesterday, and now it's like more pain to the. Man, you guys are just really mean to us.
Dude,
I got let's not make it political. You gotta choose your kids as a secret, man. Sorry.
No, we were out celebrating a couple things. The last night being one of them.
There you go.
Yeah. It was it's a secret book. Another one came out. This would probably be part of it. Another historic presidential election that a lot of people off guard. So
yeah, sorry for being tardy.
That's all right, man. Family comes first.
Here's what it is. We're talking Milwaukee out of nowhere, but it happened.
Yeah, we ain't even got into New York yet. But I was just telling him to fill you in real quick. I was looking at the book because I'm like, is there something more about trying to pinpoint a better dig spot in St. Augustine? And I was looking on page 221 and 222 of the book and realized that there's no listing for Spanish at all in the book. There's no Spanish ferry listing. So he's going to get the book. So I'm thinking, is there some way, because there's a bunch of ubiquitous stories. And I'm like, is he hiding? So I was like, God, I got to go to every single one of these stories. And what I do is I go to the story and I just kind of scroll down through and look for anything that's talking about St. Augustine. Rockets, anything with the Germans, with the Spanish. Is it mentioning conquistador? I just look for any keywords. And in my, some stories, it's like one paragraph and it just says a quick line. Then it goes back to a bunch of nonsense, which the book is. It's like fairy stuff, fairy fiction, fairy fiction, fairy fiction. Look, here's a real historical person, and then fairy fiction, fairy fiction. But some of these stories, they'll jump from. You'll see multiple fairies listed in one story. But if you go to the back of the book and you go, hey, this thing says German, but I see it says France, but it ain't listed in the back. So, you got to highlight that.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah.
Have you mapped out these interconnections? If you put a spreadsheet together that's like, hey, this story, here are the dynamics around it. Here's what puzzles I think it relates to and the people. And that's just me. I think in spreadsheets, right? It's like, I got to see it to that would just be interesting to me because I think, as I mentioned, like for NYC at least, I think if you're not using the fair people stories, you can be in a lot of different places.
I do stuff like that in my book. So I just highlight keywords and then see what's. This is why
I think some of that's out there somewhere, and people have done this. But it would be cool to have that resource to be like, hey, here's what stories we think relate to,
that would be Christy Wheeler's archive page. That's what she's trying to do.
You're right.
It's somebody who does those spreadsheets. I think Cindy Henry does. Somebody else had I can't remember who that is. I'm sorry. Someone had very detailed, they'd wrote down all this crap. I can't do that.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. You're right about that archive page, though. It is like that, kind of.
Yeah.
So she runs a page out there on a website or in a Facebook group.
It's on Facebook.
It's called Archive Secret.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Good
and where
page.
she's tried to collect all the all this data and stuff in one spot, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. She's doing a collection of basic clues that I guess
what she feels is important.
Yeah.
Important things.
If anybody's interested in the link on Facebook, that's it.
Oh,
yeah, go check it out. It's a good page. She's a good hunter.
Yeah, she's almost like being the. It's like she's being the historian of all this. She's right.
Who is it again? I'm sorry.
Christy Wheeler.
Christy Wheeler.
Yeah, she's at.
Yeah, I think I've
page.
chatted back and forth with her on stuff.
Yeah, shout out to Christy Wheeler.
Yeah, Christy.
Hey, anybody willing to put time in and willing to share is like a friend of ours, right? I mean,
hey, we need to start working together and supporting each other. Otherwise, nothing's going to get found. Right or wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
100%.
Dig spot. Don't. I tell everybody, keep your dig spot to yourself until you figure out it's there and whatever, because they're pirates of the secret everywhere, and they're going to run and dig up your crap. And by the next time you go there, you're going to see holes everywhere. And if you go dig, God, fill your holes in, folks. Anybody smart, clean up after yourself. That is the reason why these places, including Josh Gates, Thomas Quinn was one of his producers, and he said some of these cities that Josh Gates contacted them and said, hey, we want to do a show there with this person. They said, get the hell out of here. We don't want nothing to do with this secret book. And that's because of data. Yeah. And it's almost everywhere unless you want to pay in San Francisco, which I know you did recently, Mark, but some of these places, if they catch you in there for shovel, it's like last year at the Waterside Theater in Roanoke Island. People in there in the middle of the night. I'm not going to mention the guy about Golden Gate Park has sensors out there at night because bad stuff happens in that park, and you trip those things off, and the cops show up. They know where you're at. Cameras in there. You can't run around in the dark, and they're going to know exactly where you're at.
At White Point Gardens, it was my job to stop you, and I've stopped many of you over the years. Okay,
dude, when I was there,
everywhere.
Dude, I saw holes everywhere. I mean, by the base of these oak trees, someone had dug like a 6-inch hole, and then they hit some roots, and it's like, come on. but Byron couldn't have buried nothing there 2 feet. The tree is under the ground there, and the roots are stretching out as far as the branches are.
2 feet, 3 feet is a myth. I don't believe that.
No, none of them have been that. The 2 found weren't anywhere close. The tops of both of them were 15 inches.
Which does not bode well for those areas that have been worked on, right? If that happens to be where your spot is, then it's very likely that it was found by some guy and thrown away, or in a backhoe, or in a garbage dump. And
hey, a hurricane might take it out to sea.
That's it's the sad reality of it. So I don't know. So in New York, I mean, what do you guys think? You guys know where I stand on this, right? And why I'm at where I'm at, and so.
Yeah. Well, we'll discuss it here too. That's what we're here for. But yeah, I know what you think.
I think New York's gone. New York's been gone since 2000, and I think that's the one Byron was mentioning that might have been destroyed, because that's the only one he could have kept track on anyway, and he could have passed by there on the way to his office. Yeah. I actually found out where his office was, but I think when he saw that construction, that's what he. But at that point, I don't think he gave 2 flips about the book anymore. Anyway,
I think it's still there, but I think we're going to have to be real ingenuitive to get it. I mean, that goes for pretty much all of them, but I think I get it. They let me. I was so
disappointed when I actually got to that point. I went, "Get the hell out of here!" Because today it actually looks. If you look at the basically where Foley Square used to be, they got that spirit of freedom or something, and on the ground it looks like the clock hands to go out to these big circles. And then when I did research, I go, "Oh crap, that's new." And when did they do all this? Back in 2000. I was like,
I think Mark, if it's where you think it is, it's probably still there, right?
No.
Now gone?
No. Wow. No. And so here's the thing. I arrived at this just, and again, I've looked at like 5 different puzzles. Mm-hmm. This is a theory I have on just the big picture. I like to think big picture. Mm-hmm. And because I think if you get the big picture right, it really helps you with the little picture, which is an area 7 by 7. So my theory is as follows, and this speaks to. So I'm sharing my screen there, Eric.
Here we go.
So this is my theory, guys.
I see Teddy Roosevelt, dude.
I have a feeling, and this logically makes sense to me, but it may not to other people. If you're on the right path, there is no room for there to be another answer. And so I would humbly contend to you that, where people say, well, this is an idea and I could go this way or that way. Like, no, I don't think so. I think when you're on the right track for these, there are clues that eliminate everything else. And so this is my thing on New York and Von Briesen. And I understand how people, they want to be up in the city and Brooklyn, and I don't know, maybe. But as I interpret it, the clues as provided in New York City do just that. They only give you one option if you are using all the clues. So, and then you start to look at, okay, well, if you buy into that idea, and for me, I'm in Von Briesen Park on Staten Island. If you buy into that, it's like, is there anything to support that? Is there anything around it that really makes a lot of sense? And I think there is. But here's the problem, and again, I don't want to dominate this whole thing, but at least here in Von Briesen, we can get into why Von Briesen if you want. I'm happy to talk about it. The problem here is that these trails were redone I think in 2000. And
where exactly is that park?
It's right. It's just north of Fort Wadsworth on the Staten Island side of the Verrazano Bridge.
Okay.
So there's a few things, like, again, the clues as presented in the Fair Folk stories, they don't give you, they're very specific. So if you go against those or you don't use them, and I have a solve that does, it's like I'm using something right there in the book. I'm just using without interpretation. It just says right there. So that's why, like here in New York, I wish that other things would work for other people and their solves. But if I'm using kind of what's there and I look at very simple interpretation, you have to be down in this area. Okay. So there's ways to not be there, but I think those are much harder to prove. Anyway, so this area, to what you guys were just talking about, the problem here is, and I looked at like the problem with Von Briesen Park. There's no good, like you can't walk through there on Google Maps. So for whatever reason you can't, and it's a wide open park. It's just, I think it's such an anomaly. It's just so hidden and no one knows about it, and there's literally nothing there, that it's kind of like an afterthought for people. So that's why I had to go there. I've been there 3 times, but I had to go there and literally spend a half a day investigating this whole area. And then when you're at the park itself, if you're running that through the clues and the verse particularly, you can only be in one spot there. Now that took me a while to get to this point, because you're kind of like, you don't know, and it's just this wide open space. But I will tell you, like, this is unequivocally, if you like Von Briesen Park, this is a place to be, and you can see the problem there. The problem is you do get into there's these massive trees right against the trail, and there's this effing bench right here, and you can't go down that far. So I will tell you, if this happens to be the right spot, in the course of them putting this frickin' park bench right where it should be, I just don't think it's there.
It's gonna
Now, I think it was buried there. There's the ton, all the evidence, but anyway, so this is my whole point is, and this is true in Charleston, not as true, I think, in San Francisco, but like this is a spot in New York particularly where I think the clues tell you it's like it can only be in one general area. And I would suppose, like some of these other puzzles, if you're on the right track, you can't get off of that track. Like there's no way to go somewhere else if it's right. That's how I feel. Now I could be wrong on that, but
that's what I say. So if that park, you'll find something in that park that you can connect into the book and find that park or something in that park or a location. It's probably going to be hidden. It's my theory of New York, which I believe it's in Thomas Paine Park. It's a park, a square, and a garden. And it's Thomas Paine Park, and inside Thomas Paine Park is Foley Square. He's a small businessman. And the bridal garden, which is represented by the Spirit of 76 because she's a bride. And the maitre d' is also involved in a wedding. But small businessman, because that's what Big Tom Foley was. That's the kind, he's not saying Big Tom Foley. He's not saying Thomas Paine. And he's not telling you it's a bridal garden. He's showing the imagery of a bride, imagery of when you go, who the hell is Foley Square named after? And you find all his history. Basically, and it even says in the history, all he was a small businessman in New York. And he had some political connections. And the park was named after him because Governor Al Smith named the park after him as a favor for helping him. That is a monster part of the post I made the other day. You don't say George Washington, you say founding father, dollar bill. He was known as the father of America. All this association, so you go, eventually somebody goes, oh, that's George Washington. But he's never going to say
connected.
The what?
Washington. I just want to get it right. I'm writing this stuff down. You think Washington is connected to the puzzle, New York puzzle?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Byron's using. Everybody's got to keep in mind he's using the wars. The Brooklyn Monument reference, which is north of New York, but it's when you go to that monument, if you took that travel, you go, what is this monument? It's that cannon that's Ben Asen took a photo of. That takes you right back to Brooklyn. And then you go, oh, what was this artillery? Oh, they were part of the Revolutionary War.
Where's the cannon at again, Eric?
I can't remember the name of that place. I know
Somebody found it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it took me forever on Google Maps just to track
All
it
right.
down.
So let me throw something out here.
Okay.
Do you think, because that picture's in Wooly Bully,
Yeah, that's where it's at.
and I actually bought that from Ben. I got it signed, and I'm thrilled. It's sitting in you can't see it right now because I got AVB, but it's in my living room right now. So here's the thing, right? This is how my simple brain works. If they're showing me the Eagle statue, which is in Central Park, and he's showing me this cannon that is in New York somewhere, and I know someone said, "Hey, I found it. Here it is." I can't remember who it was. To me, that says the Wooly Bully has to be about New York, and it's got Teddy. If there's a state that's tied to Teddy, it's got to be.
Why would New York be associated with Teddy?
Well, he was the chief of police, the mayor of New York City, the governor.
Exactly. That's the exact.
Okay, so like my simple brain just says, okay, what's he trying to tell us in the story? If you don't think Wooly Bully is related to the New York City puzzle, we're not going to get very far in any discussion. So I think that's a safe landing spot, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree about the Wooly Bully. About being
so now
see, FDR is also used in the New York puzzle, and he was also a governor of New York.
Okay, but FDR is not in the puzzle,
and you're not going to go. Oh yeah, he's actually mentioned in the book, but he's hidden too.
But he's not in the Wooly Bully.
No. But
so that's my thing. Is you might be right, but
Teddy's connected to New York and Milwaukee, where FDR is connected to New York and Roanoke because he actually visited there. Roanoke Island is probably the biggest outside the Lost Colony. The visit of FDR to watch the Lost Colony play in 1937 was like the biggest event. They even got a plaque on the grounds like this is where FDR sat and watched the opening, play. And of course, Paul Green's in there, so that play is relevant. But he's another person not mentioned. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Could you just show my screen there, just so people can see it's Wooly Bully.
Hang on. Come on. There it goes. Yeah, because Wooly Bully. So Woolly Mammoth and Bully Pulpit. Those are the two words he's using.
Well, that was the song, right? The song Wooly Bully.
Yeah, and Teddy. See, Woolly is connected. I'll tell you how Woolly's connected to FDR. FDR served woolly mammoth meat at a meet and greet. People ate old ass woolly mammoth meat. When you dig in his history, I swear to God, I'm not kidding. You look it up.
All right, so
and also you'll see in the book when they talk about chicken a la king, that was put on the White House menu by FDR's wife because that was his favorite food. And I forgot what story that's in, but it says something about chicken a la king. That's something that once you're on that FDR path and you go down through all that, you're like, oh, chicken a la king. What does this got to do with FDR? You look it up. It's in the history.
There's only one person in this whole secret hunt that would know that, I think, and that's you, Eric.
That's me. That's a prime example. All this stuff that's connected to these individuals with, just imagine if you're playing this game. It's like, remember that old game show where one person had a card and it'd say automobile and the other person, and you got to go, a car, or you're driving. No, a car. Yeah, a car. Next. That's what he's doing. Without actually saying the person's name, it's just a bunch of crap that you can. When I came across the chicken a la king, I was like, Jesus Louise. But of course, that's in Washington. But I was already following him in, and then I read about the 1937 visit, and also when you look at the British Crown, right? FDR with Roanoke, he's the first president that invited the Queen to come to America. He was considered royalty before the Kennedys were. And he went there and he said, everybody needs to come see this because he was so on the British bandwagon. He goes, this is the start of North America and where we are at today. And he just said, screw the Spanish. No, come and see the British story. So, every single country that's come here has, it's either Christopher Columbus or Balboa or Ponce de Leon or Mendez or, Sir Walter Raleigh. It's different locations, different explorers from different countries, but they all come here and they try to write. It's like I said a while back. So there are archaeologists that are west of Roanoke Island here just recently, I think last year, and they figured out that there was a Spanish colony there before the British ever even showed up. So that totally rewrites that history of Roanoke Island. And, Chesapeake Bay and Jamestown and all that, they really never had any problems with the Spanish because that area was pretty hidden. But they're figuring out, and the one guy in the show said they looked at historical records, and hell yeah, they tried to set up an encampment there, and the Indians came out of nowhere and beat the crap out of them. They left, and they never came back. And time later, that's when Sir Ralph Lane shows up and does all the stupid stuff he does and kills a bunch of the indigenous tribe people. And then a year later, this is when John White and the Roanoke colonists of women and kids show up like this is such a great idea. Maybe we won't look so intimidating if we bring kids. People wonder why they disappear when Ralph Lane slaughtered most of the tribe like a year prior and hung the chief's head up on a stick. Oh yeah, they're not going to remember that when you come back a year later. I mean,
the kids will protect you.
Anybody want to know what happened to the lost colony? Yeah, they got killed. That's what happened to them, and you ain't gonna find their body. The natives are like, "What'd y'all come back for after you just killed us a year ago?"
Well, some of the women were probably taken too, and assimilated.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but I'm pretty sure the men were slaughtered and they took the women. They said in North Georgia,
didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, they found a indigenous tribe there where they had beads that they knew came from England, and explorers said, well, some of these children of these tribes have blue eyes, so they knew there was some inbreeding with European going on there. So that was the fate of the women in Virginia Dare, unfortunately, but that basically is what it is. I mean, the indigenous tribes weren't stupid. They had to fight other tribes all the time. Somebody comes in there and slaughters them. Like, hey, these look just like the people that left a year ago. And look, they're coming in by boat, just like the other ones left. They probably just let them set up camp and everything. And I always wonder why. In the heck John White leaves his wife and his pregnant daughter there. Hey, I'm going back to England for a surprise. See ya.
And not come back for a long time.
Yeah, and he wanted to come right back, but the war broke out with France, and it delayed his return for 3 years because they needed the ship. But when they come back,
he obviously didn't want him because my wife and kid are coming with me. So
yeah, I go, boy, that story just makes him sound like a total coward. Yeah. Because I think he knew what Ralph Lane had done, and he's like, yeah, I'm not staying. I'm going back for supplies. Well, we just got here. Yeah. And when he comes back 3 years later, of course, everybody's gone.
Isn't that nuts to think about? I mean, sailing across the middle of the ocean, there's no navigation besides the stars, and they'd have no weather reports, and just the balls it took to actually encounter. Well, hey, I wanted to show you this on Wooly Bully. Okay, so if you agree, this thing relates to New York, and I think that is super obvious. I don't think this is a stretch if he's showing us two visuals plus Teddy, right?
Well, you see the words he's using there: the Teutonic origin, which is German. Then you see the word. German.
That's a Prussian.
Is it Prussian?
It is Prussian. Now it was of that region.
Area.
But so here's the thing, right? Is I think you have to leap in solving these things. You have to leap. And so every leap should be as least risky as possible. And the more risk you're taking, meaning the more creative you're getting with solutions, and the more you're not listening to what he's telling you, the more likely you are to be wrong. So I'm taking all these stories in the book and I'm saying which relate to New York City. This one, if it doesn't, then he is purposefully trying to be misleading, or he's just dumb. Okay? Right? So it's like, yeah, I think Wooly Bully relates to New York City. I would give that, in my opinion, it's 100%. There's no way this doesn't relate to New York because of all the elements that were shown. Okay? Right? So now what is he telling us in this story? And I think this is part of what people are missing. This is a big part of what they're missing is they read this stuff, but then they can't really conceptualize or make any connections, so they skip over it. So for me, when I went looking at New York City, the first thing I do is I know from looking at the other puzzles, he likes to be near water. He likes to have, especially when he's in a bay, he likes views over the water back to the city. That's true in San Francisco. It's true in Charleston. And I think it's true here. So when I'm looking at a map, I'm looking at all the parks on the bay that have a view of the Statue of Liberty. You've got this image in the painting that looks like the Statue of Liberty. It is the one symbol, and I make this argument all the time with people. How can you not make the Statue of Liberty a centerpiece to this? It can't just be, well, here's this thing that represents it. This is the universal symbol for all immigrants forever and ever, anywhere in the world. It is the Statue of Liberty. So if this book was about, repairing flat tires or something, that would be different, but it's not. It's about immigrants. And he lived in New York. So if this is my view, if you can't see the Statue of Liberty, this would be the biggest miss ever. Okay, I just don't think you'd do that. Anyway, so when I'm looking around, I'm saying, well, what parks are on the bay that have a view of the city? And there's only a few places, like there's in Brooklyn and on Staten. Okay, so say that narrows it down, and then oh wow, there's this bridge that really matches the painting. So anyway, this is my thing, right? So I'm looking, and I know because of working on San Francisco, he's at a battery there. So there's this Fort Wadsworth. So I'm looking at Fort Wadsworth. I see this tiny little park. Well, what is that thing? Well, it's called Von Briesen. Okay, well, who was Von Briesen? Okay, so that's how they're my stepping stones. Was this guy an auto mechanic, or would he, did something like had a cigar shop? No, this guy, he existed to help poor German immigrants, and then eventually other immigrant groups who were underrepresented. He was great friends with Teddy. Okay, so when you start to look at this guy and you say, well, of all these people that are in history that Byron could feature, I would tell you this is the one guy you could hang your hat on and say he is the epitome of what Byron was communicating about immigrants and all that. Okay, so that just makes so much sense to me. Now, did he actually do that? I don't know. But when you start to look now at Wooly Bully, gosh, this guy lines up perfectly with the Wooly Bully. Teutonic is Prussian. Now, if Von Briesen was like a country guy from, I don't know, West Virginia or something, that would be different. He was born in Prussia. So right here, you've got this, it says Wooly Bully is Teutonic. So name me somebody in history that was Prussian. I mean, there doesn't exist anymore, right? So, my goodness. Oh, and by the way, he spoke German. And he talks about him being German. He was adopted a patriotic fervor. Von Briesen fought in the Civil War. He was very close friends with Teddy. Okay, so when you look at the Prussian flag, the Russian flag, the Polish flag, of which Von Briesen was all of those because he was Prussian. He was actually multi-nationalities. So when you start to look at that, it's like, gosh, Teddy's sitting here on this eagle. The eagle is part of the Prussian history and lore, along with the current flags of Germany, Russia, and Poland, and America, right? So it's just, anyway, find me a better fit for a person who's described in here. Isn't that odd that Wooly Bully happens to describe this guy who's in this park that sort of fits all of these things that he tells us needs to fit? So that's why I'm so certain that this is the place. I think it'd be such an oddball thing for this to not, for it to be coincidence that he's mentioning I never know what Teutonic origin was. Ask 1,000 people, and there's like one guy who knows. All right, it's oddball. It's odd. So this is where I get like, why am I not interested in Brooklyn or Manhattan or anywhere else? Because he's telling us right here like who this person has to be. And the spirit of 76.
He also said that he's the spirit of patriotism. So if you go to the other story, the spirit of 76, there's two spirits right there, right? And
yeah, I mean,
I get what you're saying, but
so if you go against this,
armament, there's a lot more to New York. It even says in the Spotter's Tips, he's only dangerous when armed.
He took up arms in the Civil War. But anyway, so the last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, is, I mean, clearly, if you don't think Spirit of 76 relates to New York, then again, I can't help you. You're not on my team if you don't think this puzzle relates to New York. So Byron tells Ben, "Hey, get on the ferry to Staten to take this picture."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He doesn't say get on the boat to Brooklyn. He doesn't say take it from Battery Park, take a picture. He says go on the ferry and take. And by the way, this view that you see is, if you just keep going, it's the view you get from Von Briesen. Anyway, the Spotter's Tip here. It tells us exactly where to be. It says it's usually found a max distance from the monuments erected to her fame. Some of the Spotter's Tips are not very helpful, I think. This one tells you got to be far away from the Spirit of 76, or I'm sorry, of the statue. So he's telling you you got to. And people say, well, why not down on Coney Island? You can't see the statue from there. So anyway, this is the logic. It's like you have to be down on the Staten side because he's telling you right here, maximum distance. That's not Central Park. It's actually not Brooklyn because Brooklyn curves around when you're headed towards Fort Hamilton, and you can't see the statue from there. So this is the leaps of faith. So like when people say I've got this solved for somewhere else, and I think you guys do too, but I'm not that interested in it because it stands in opposition to what I see right here in black and white. That's why I'm so you can't get me off of the spot. Anyway, so it's right here in black and white. If this story relates to New York, he's telling us be as far away from it as you can. And when you look on a map, that's down by the Verrazano Bridge, which happens to look like what's in the painting. I don't know.
Where in the painting? Just
the arch.
Yeah, but there's a lot of stuff in that story because it also mentions Revolutionary War, Jefferson's Inkwell, Civil War. Cruelty.
Yes, but the Spotter's Tips gives us specifics about where to be. Now, in the verse, if you recall,
you need all of them of all the connecting stories for them to make any sense. That's what I've found.
This is a map thing that says be as far away from the. So you'd say, well, why don't I go north? Well, he tells us look north to the Isle of B. So he's telling you to be south of the statue. So this is like I can't get interested in anything else. I wish I could.
See, when it says look north of the Isle of B, you're looking north at Thomas Paine Park because he's from the British Isles.
So my challenge to people on this, and this is subjective, I grant you. You have got to make the statue not a sideshow. It's the universal. It's the one. If I said this book and I described the whole book to you, you would say like the Statue of Liberty has got to be a part of it. So I would. My challenge to you, Eric, is If you don't see the statue from where you're at, how are you making it a centerpiece? You have to do that with the statue.
Said at the meetup, Poundcar said at the meetup that pretty much everything in the painting, I think he said you're going to see from the spot. And I don't think Poundcar knows that much about the actual puzzle. And from what I found out, what he said at the meetup is wrong. Because like you said, you can't, from certain parks, you can't see the Statue of Liberty. From my park, you can't either. So
you can't.
And based on the book, my opinion of the book, that's exactly where you're supposed to be, is Thomas Paine Park. And that took me 3.5 years to figure that out. And you know, also Ben Asen said the World Trade Center, which is right there in that photo, he wanted that from the small businessman story. And Ben Asen said, I couldn't get that shot that he wanted because the building was in the way. And that shot he wanted behind the puppet, that's Foley Square. In the photo is the park where I think the cask was.
But you have to,
why you get there, and it's all through the Manhattan Project, which is, now you talk about how iconic the Statue of Liberty is. The Manhattan Project is the biggest, it's the biggest event in history. It even eclipses the moon landing.
But the book isn't about killing millions of people with a nuke. It's about immigrants and immigration. So I just don't.
It's about
how can
the
you
story of the creation of it, but it's all, you know, the Manhattan Project came from World War II. That's where the FDR connection is. That's where the Japanese connection. She's holding the chrysanthemum because when we first, Trinity was the first test of the atomic bomb, but the chrysanthemum is the death flower. It's the symbol of the Japanese, and that's who we dropped it on. Like when people say they see the onions, that's the Kremlin. That's the Cold War. That was something that came, you know, it was atomic bombs and atomic nuclear. It's just playing around with the atom, but that's what the atomic bombs became, nuclear weapons. And that's also the connection to the Wernher von Braun and the space flight and the Saturn rockets, because later they were, you know, we're not sending these to the moon and into space anymore. We're strapping bombs to these suckers, and they became ICBMs. That technology just progressed through time.
I just think in these two clues in the verse, Byron's words directly to us, the Isle of B, it would make sense that, and yes, there can be other interpretations of the Isle of B. What's the most obvious one that relates to the book? You can't argue to me that the Isle of B is something other than Bedloe's Island. In terms of rank ordering their likelihood.
Okay,
because of the nature of the book.
Yeah, you got the two stories there for New York, but now you have to go after the ferries when you figure out FDR, World War II. And he was president when World War II started, and he died in 1945. But who were we fighting against? The Germans, which you have listed for the Woolly Bully. That's your clue. You got to.
But here's what I see. Byron is telling us verbatim. Be a max distance. Now it's even strange to say a max distance, is it not? How can you be a max distance? That would imply there are multiple max distances, right? So the words he uses are very important. You can't swear
from before it detonated. That can be the exact reference to that. The monument's just thrown in there for wordplay. But
why not take it? Why not take it at face value? Now Ben, per my conversation with him, Byron said verbatim to him, "Get on the ferry to Staten." That in and of itself, you could interpret as super important to where the box is, couldn't you? I mean, he has so many other options.
Picture the other way. That's why I'm saying this.
He wants the view this way.
Twin Tower shot that he wanted that he couldn't get from the small businessman photo.
Well, Byron never asked him to do that. Byron asked him to take a picture of the sky.
Byron said he wanted the World Trade Center in the background.
No, he said he wanted the statue. Well, maybe anyway, he wanted the Statue of Liberty in the shot. So I will tell you, the view from at least the beach, which is down on the water, it's this view. Okay, so to me, like, that supports this idea of where it's at. But I'm going to challenge you on this. A max distance away, if I pair that with be south of the Isle of Bee, you've got to be on the Staten side. So how do you rectify the fact that he's telling you be as far away from the statue as you can be to the south of it? That's why New York is not as hard as people think it is if you use what's here. If you decide to disregard the spotter's tip, then I would tell you my solve idea is far more likely because I'm using what he's actually telling me where the box is. And you are.
I mean, he's showing
can you
imagery of
walk me through
Manhattan.
the
Why would
verse?
you go to Stanton? Why didn't they take the photo the other way, the way the boat was going? Because obviously that's the wake behind it there.
Because when you're standing where the box is, this is the view you see.
Oh, I mean, yeah, could be.
But look, so this is my
completely disagree with
this
you.
I don't want to be. You completely disagree.
I completely disagree.
Well, the verse says be south of the statue as far away as you can get. And by the way, that's not the Brooklyn side. I can get further away from the statue and still see it on the Staten side. So anyway, I don't mean to be argumentative and I don't mean to be unwilling to look at other things, but I don't think you can overcome this. I think you have to throw this away.
There's some vagueness in there. I mean, that the statue max distance. What does all that really mean? What's
Can
you
read me the verse and walk me through Van Briesen Park to get to the thing?
Okay, happy to do so.
I never even looked at Van Briesen Park. That's why I say, and I don't ever remember coming.
Well, okay, so anyway, you sort of see where at least where I stand. I could be totally wrong, but I'll tell you this fits like a lot. Anyway, when you look at the evidence as it sits, if I just take it on the surface, Isle of Bee, Bedloes, so I had to do a little research, right? Any hunter has to do a little research. It used to be called Bedloes. Instead of saying Statue of Liberty, he's not going to say Statue of Liberty, probably, right? He's going to talk around it. But in any case, if you just take these very simple clues he presents, you can only be in one spot. And this is my point I was making earlier. Now, you do have to make some leaps, but I would tell you, I think these are safe leaps. I think it's safe to say Spirit of 76 and Wooly Bully unequivocally related to New York. So I can, now I'm going to sink my teeth into these puzzles, and I'm going to use exactly what's there, and I'm not going to go too far off to get creative. I'm just going to use what's there. So I don't think in some of these puzzles you can do it this way. I think they're all solved differently. And I don't use any of the fair people in these other places where I'm at, in these other cities. But this one in particular, I think if you're not using them, you can be in all these different spots. But if you use them, you can only.
The book tells you got to use them. That's the most important part of this book.
Well,
there's no other reason for him to give you all this fairy information, which basically the fairies are just hidden. It's the real immigration of the Spanish. He just calling them the fairies.
Can you use fairies to it?
Well, it's I'll give my interpretation. Okay, so she has the statues of Liberty's face. This is the simple version for New York. That's what the clue is. She is Lady Justice. The chrysanthemum is the death flower, and it was on a golden chrysanthemum was on the front of every Japanese naval vessel. That's the symbol of the Japanese imperial family. That's a direct connection that flower is to World War II. The rest of the World War II story after the war, the Cold War, everything. You got the Kremlin, that tilted building on the painting that's on that left side. That's a piece of art that was at Foley Square at the time Byron buried it. And if you look in the painting, if you put a line up there on the painting, you'll see it's actually tilted, and that's what the art was called, Tilted Arc. Even though it was different, it was on the ground curving around like this. It's big in New York history because people had to file lawsuits to get rid of it. It was just like a rectangle piece of steel that was stood up on its side at an angle, and people couldn't stand it. It was an eyesore. The atoms, all those little dots, look up an atom. You'll see them same colors. All that connects to Einstein. So in this puzzle, you got the American of FDR. You have the Russians, the Germans, the Japanese, the Italians. Everybody, the Chinese, because what the Japanese were doing to them over there. This puzzle 11 is encompassing the entire events of the World War II leading up to the Manhattan Project that ended the war in Japan. But Germany was already attempting to develop this bomb because they were going to drop it on Manhattan. And they just called it the super weapon. The Manhattan Project was just a code name that the U.S. government had come up with to develop the atomic bomb. Now, that max distance, that could be like, like in Aliens, when they're leaving the planet, and they're like, oh, it's a, someone fires in here, there's going to be a thermonuclear explosion. And the thing is, you've got 15 minutes to reach maximum safe distance. It's giving you a warning in that movie. Just anything that popped in my head. So Trinity out in Los Alamos, New Mexico, where they detonated the first bomb, that's where the monument is to that max distance from New York City.
There could be a million interpretations of it, right?
But so the Manhattan Project started in New York, and when it started, the development and the test to create that first atomic bomb, it blew up in New Mexico. You could say there's your max distance. Start in New York.
Yeah, but we're talking about the Statue of Liberty. I'm just taking it very much on the surface.
Where it started. 980 Broadway was the office where the Manhattan Project was actually given its name, because that's where General Leslie Groves was when he was promoted from colonel to general, when FDR put him in charge of that project. See,
I'm not arguing against that, Eric. I just think he's giving us some orientation, right? So maybe it would be helpful if we walk through the verse. This is the Von Briesen idea. And if you guys want to talk about something else,
the best story. The Glitches has all the keys that lead to the Manhattan Project.
No, I'd like you to read the verse and take us to it. I mean, you could do it too, Eric. If that's
yeah. So
yeah,
in the shadow of the great giant. So the sun, as it moves to the south, it projects a shadow north, right? And so this is it's an orientation situation. He's telling you be north of whatever. He's saying basically be north of the great giant. Find the arm that extends over the slender path. Now it's Chris Kasokoulos. I'm not saying his name right. But I think this is one of the single best answers to any clue. A slender path. When is the last time you described something, a walking path, let's say, as slender? Never. Okay,
right,
it's
let's go verse to verse to verse with all three of us.
All right. So
yeah.
Anyway,
so in the shadow of great giant.
Yeah. So he said, find the slender path over the slender path. So this is very important. I think it's super important. When he's using odd terminology, that should stop you, and you should be asking a lot of questions and be super curious. Why? Why is he describing this in a very odd, particular way, or using a misspelling as an example?
Yep.
So I will stop there, but the start of the Von Briesen Park solve is on the Staten side, which, again, Spirit of 76 tells you to do, is right under the bridge. And that area, by the way, is known as a bird estuary. So in the summertime, there are thousands of birds that come into this area. It's known for that. And my guess is 40 years ago, when there was less humans roaming around there was probably a ton more. Now there probably is less, okay? So when you start to orient yourself in this area over, by the bridge on the Staten side, this makes sense. It makes 100% sense, okay? I don't think it's a stretch. The last thing I'll say on this, and I'll shut up. Slender path is another term for a weed. W-E-E-D. A slender path is a weed. Now, as it turns out, Battery Weed is just north of the bridge. And the road that you are on, that path, is called Weed Road. So I find that more than just a coincidence that at least where you would start this one on the Von Briesen Park solve, this makes so much sense to me. It's not a stretch. He's connecting and using this term that is a weed and battery weed down there, which he loves military anyway. So that's I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure you can find a better fit. But anyway, so that's how you start on the Stanton side right near the bridge.
All right.
All right. So you just got the slender path. Where are we? Keep on going.
Okay. So in the summer, you'll hear whirring sound. A whirring sound is the flapping of wings. There's many interpretations, okay? But again, if you research this area, it's a bird estuary. So in the summertime, all these birds come in. That makes sense to me. You'll hear cars abound. When you're standing under the bridge right there, it is flippin' loud. It's loud, and you hear cars all the time. There are tons of cars there. You can't. And unlike because I was just in San Francisco, right? And the bridge there, it has a little bit of a hum to it, but even when you stand right under the Golden Gate Bridge, there's a path that goes underneath that, and you're probably like 20 feet away from the bridge. On the Staten side of the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, it's up like 100 feet. It's way up there. So you're not close to it all, but the sound is like 10 times louder, 100 times louder. Okay, so anyway, that's just for references.
Okay.
So cars abound. The sign nearby speaks of India's navies. So that is actually, there's a sign that was erected back in 1976 that spoke of Hamilton. So that's this. So nearby, he's sort of, I think what he's doing here is he's doing a little hat tip to Fort Hamilton, which you can see it's directly on the other side. It's on the Brooklyn side of the bridge. So he's sort of leading you from here, he's leading you north. Because from the bridge, you take the slender path, which is Battery Weed or Fort Weed Road, and you sort of come up, and then you can see Fort Hamilton, which is where this sign was again put up in 1976. I'm sorry, 1977. Okay.
Okay.
India's native is clearly Hamilton, I think.
What was the whirring sound again? Just real quick. I'm writing stuff down.
That's the birds that are there in the summertime.
Okay.
That are nesting or doing whatever. Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
All right. So where'd that go? Okay, sorry. All right. So that's a hat tip to Hamilton. Of course, he's going to do that. So this one I think is a little hymn of hard word in 3 vowels. The best I can do with this one is Von Briesen, Hamilton. I don't know. I'm actually not sure on that. So he is saying of him. I do think this is a reference to Von Briesen because, in essence, there's no real journey here. He's not telling you, except when you're right at the box location, take 22 or place as many steps as the hour, which is 22, right? 11 times 2. So you're not going very far. And so I know some people are at Fort Wadsworth. The problem with Fort Wadsworth, there's really no battery imagery in the New York painting. In San Francisco, where you're at Battery Lancaster, there's a ton of battery imagery in that painting. In this one, if you'll notice, the painting is very organic. So the question is how do you know to go into Von Briesen Park? And the answer to that is, I think it speaks to what Byron tells us, library, library, library. So if I'm saying, well, okay, I think I'm at the bridge and I'm heading into Fort Wadsworth, where do I go from here? When you look at the history of the man, and I encourage you to do so, of Von Briesen and who he was, The fact that he knew Teddy, he fought in the war, he's Prussian, which Wooly Bully tells you the guy's Prussian. He fought for the underdog. He fought for unrepresented migrants. That was his thing. When you read his letters, and I have a bunch of letters that were written between Teddy and von Briesen, this guy is an absolutely eloquent writer.
So
I don't think somebody else wrote this stuff for him, but English was clearly not his native language. But he writes so eloquently. I feel like an absolute, schlep when I'm reading this guy's writing, and it wasn't even his native language. Anyway,
okay,
so he's this incredible writer.
What's your interpretation of the simple roots, Rhapsodic man soil? And we know Gaze North to the ILB. Well, how about that?
Yep.
The simple roots, Rhapsodic man soil.
So what you have to do here, hymn of hard word and 3 vols, I think that's von Briesen. Okay? I don't see how it could be anyone else. So now I'm in the park, right? And I know I need to view the statue. So you can't be inside the park. You've got to be on the shoreline.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm here listening.
You've got to be on the shoreline. Okay? So what I did, Douglas, is I went and I took pictures of every single tree, and I was just, I was moving my way around the park, and I'm trying to say, okay, I'm going to take this thing at face value, which is 22 steps from the branch of the V, which, let's throw that back up. So I know it could be a lot of things, but a branch is either a road or a tree, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
when you look at the painting itself, and this is another argument I have against the city, it's very organic painting. It's a very organic painting. There are multiple trees, what look to me like trees, in the painting. It's not man-made whatsoever. There's this huge open space that would imply to me water. Okay, so I think you're looking through trees over water, and that's exactly what you have at von Briesen. But in any case, so now he's just, if you take a look at this, he's giving you half of this verse is directing you on how to get to the box. Show me another puzzle where he spends half of the verse just giving you orientation on how to find the box.
I'd have to get
right.
back to you.
Yeah, that's a lot of the verse is.
So that should tell you right there that this is going to be hard to. He's using half of the verse to describe where the box is. So it's going to be rather hard to find the actual location. That's what you can imply from that, right? If some of the puzzles you've got, 1 or 2 lines like right at the very end or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so this is important to note that, right? So all right, so take twice as many steps the hour from the middle of the branch of the V. So the first thing I do when I go to von Briesen is I'm saying, are there any V trees? And by the way, these are historic trees. They talk about this when they describe the park. This place was known for these old historic trees that are hundreds of years old. So that's good, right? If he's using a tree here as a reference point, then that's good that they really care about these. They're not just chopping them down or whatever. All right, so I'm looking around for a V. I'm looking around for a V tree, and lo and behold, there is one. Now, some people say, well, how do you know that tree was there? It wasn't. Well, I can go back to an overhead that clearly shows the tree was there, 40 years ago. So that's this. So when I'm looking around, I know I got to be able to see the statue, so I got to be close to the water, and I'm looking for this V tree that I can go 22 steps due east. Well, 22 steps due east, and there's another V tree that's sitting on the very north end of the park, but you don't have this exposed root system that matches the bottom of the painting. So this is the only tree, this one right here, this is the only tree within 100 yards of the shore from the and the park is not that big. It's maybe 200 yards long, so it's not long at all. So from the very south end of the park to the north end, this tree right here that you see is the only tree that has an exposed root system. So when you look down at it, somebody was at sycamore, maybe.
How tall was it? Was that
I'm
tree
not
there 42 years ago?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, this tree was probably there 100, 200 years ago. Yes.
Well, say I see what you're doing here. You're basically being literal. Roots, roots.
Totally. Now I didn't know that going in. I didn't know that going in, but I'm just following these steps, right? So yeah, there happens to be this V tree.
How much different mine is.
You happen to see this V tree. If I go 22 steps, it's basically puts you right here, which is where that new bench is, sadly. But when you start to look at this root system in here, it looks like the bottom of the painting.
Yeah.
So
I totally see how what you're explaining would make sense.
You can see the gray giants. You can see the Statue of Liberty. You're in a park where this guy is the epitome of someone, I think, that Byron would want to feature in this story, who helped poor migrants.
Anywhere over there, I guarantee you that's all roots.
What's that?
In between those trees, where your X is, anywhere in there is going to be nothing but roots.
Just like it is.
That tree.
So someone, and I'm not sure quite who,
42 years ago too.
Someone dug this entire area here and probed the crap out of it. And I'm not going to say who.
Probably because they saw that V.
I heard a rumor that was done here. So back to when you start, let's say down a foot, you run into these massive, big, thick roots. Now, clearly they're 40 years old, but you don't have a lot of room to. So if this is the right spot, I'll tell you, it was buried subsurface, maybe 6 inches.
Okay. Why is it gone?
So, well, there's so they redid the trail system back in I think 2000. All right, so anyway, now I'm since I've got this V tree. So here's the thing: like, take twice as many steps as the hour or more from the middle of one branch. So I think I debated this, like how do you rectify this, because that's odd. Well, if you choose the branch that's further away, it's going to be a little bit more than 22. If you choose the branch of the V to measure from, that's up front. So in a way, he's telling you the orientation of the tree. He's saying it's kind of, it's stacked, right? The V. If the tree was facing flush with the dig spot and both branches were like this rather than stacked. So he's giving you, again, another orientation here. So you see the simple root, a rhapsodic man, it has to do with epic poetry. So when you start to look into von Briesen, he wrote poetry to people, quirky poetry, where he poked fun at himself and other people. So this is like he's saying the rhapsodic man soil. There's a huge problem with Rhapsody in Blue and what we could cover, but anyway. So then gaze north towards the Isle of B.
And you're happy. I mean,
so I'm taking a very
rhapsodic is wordplay, because most people are gonna have to go, what the hell? Bohemian Rhapsody? Let me look up that word.
So this gives you a little bit more, and I've posted this a bunch. This gives you a little bit more insight. So the dig site is here in the X. It's between these trees right here. You can see the statue. It's very small and very hard to see. In fact, it looks like this. Yeah. So this is the view, by the way, which looks exactly like the view in the Spirit of 76. So that's a statue there. This is taken from the beach. So you can see the statue. And by the way, you look through these trees and you can see the gray giant.
Yeah. And
This-
that place
these
was
simple,
pretty much unmolested too. Those trees are pretty old. And trees are 80, 60 years old. They've been
yeah.
there a
So
while.
I've posted this before. So this is
Did
the
you try
overhead
to see what that area looked like in 1981?
right here, 1980. We happen to have a super clear one.
These places weren't the safest places in 81 either.
The whole that whole part of the whole damn city was terrible in the crack. In
Yeah,
the crack.
I factored in that Byron would have. I talked to some people on New York History page, and I said, hey, I told them, basically it's this, there are people burying stuff, and it's treasure hunt, and these people said, what? What? In 1981, was this guy crazy?
Yeah, you know what? You know
Some of
what?
these
I grew up in the hood, and I'll tell you, me walking around with a shovel would scare the hell out of people in the hood. Though they would think Byron was crazy, and they would have left him alone for sure.
Yeah. There's a
They
guy,
would have
Scott.
thought he's a crazy white boy's burying people. Seriously.
There's a guy called Scotty Hookset Fishing that commented. He says, regarding the Spirit of 76, Ben Asen stated in a podcast he suggested that shot, not BP. But I know for the small businessman, I believe that's what he said he wanted was the World Trade Center in the background, because it's kind of over there, but the one building was in the way. And Ben said he could not get an angle. See, Byron wanted that shot from the courthouse steps, which is what I think her body represents in the painting. She's Lady Justice, Lady Liberty, whatever you want to call her. Just a symbol of Pearl Harbor, all that.
Hey Eric, can we do your walking to the thing with the verse?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had photos. Yeah, I've never been able to. I found one picture of this bridal garden. So it's Russian. I mean, this is the first thing. If you take New York and you use the book, it's Russian. Now, what I tell everybody, that it's not a secret, this is about nuclear war, the development of the atomic bomb, the Cold War, us dropping the bomb on Japan. And even when you go to, hang on, I'm trying to find the page in the book here. When you go to the descriptions of the gems, I don't understand why I can't find this right now. When it says frozen fire, frozen Cold War, fire, atomic bomb, I mean, he's giving you here it is right here. The topaz is the Russian prize. The royal sunstone, and we know about Tempter of the Sun, frozen fire. I mean, the aftermath of an atomic bomb blast, all the references to cold, and there's your first clue. You have frozen fire, sun. These are all references. The heat of a blast, like in Hiroshima, people were just vaporized. But once you take all, man, there's no way to simplify this, so I just got to do my best. When you take all that Manhattan Project information and how it came about, and who was president at the time, who was at war, the New York puzzle encompasses all 12 ferries, every single one of them, because this was a world war. Everybody was involved. FDR, he is a descendant of the British ferry, so there's your British. He was American, born American, but he's of British descent. The Russians, we know what the Russians were. We know what the German, Nazi, Hitler, World War II. The Japanese, we were fighting them. They came into war. The Italians, Mussolini, all that. So once you take all that and you go to this event, which you got to look in the book, because in the back of the book there's stories, there's references to Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein is, so he, during World War II, he had knowledge that the Germans were attempting to create this thing called a super weapon. And on their pamphlet for the super weapon, they showed an aerial shot of Manhattan, New York, with targeting rings going down to it. They just called it a super weapon. So in the history, Albert Einstein, he denounces his German citizenship and he takes a job at Princeton. While there, he's there with these other scientists. Now, they wouldn't let Albert Einstein into the Manhattan Project because of his political views, and also that connections he had and stuff like that. I still think he was involved. They just kept it a secret. But he actually wrote a letter to FDR warning him about what the Germans were doing. That letter is what created the Manhattan Project, which started in New York. Okay. But Albert Einstein said that letter that he wrote FDR was inspired by the writings of Thomas Paine. So right there, you have an FDR, Einstein, Thomas Paine connection. And I had to go all the way through all that history. I mean, I was in Japan, the war, all that. Germany, Italy, going back and forth, all these top secret locations of the Manhattan Project. One was in Chicago, one was in Tennessee, one was in Hanover, Maryland. Then you got the Trinity test site. You got the Bimini explosions after. All this stuff, all the way connecting to NASA and the rockets for the future of basically what became the Cold War, which is just a bunch of loaded missiles waiting to get fired at each other, and so on and so forth.
So Eric, you're making this connection based on the fairies, right? Not on the painting or the verse. Or do you see what you're talking about in the verse?
It's a combination of everything. The images of the book, the words. If you go to the glitches, okay? So I had to run around, and this all makes sense. Everything I just said will make sense in a second. So if you go to the glitches, one, it's Asian, it's ubiquitous, okay? That's page 190. And when you go to the glitches, this is where you see all these keywords. And you can go right through them all here. The glitches. Did you come down the telephone where? No, it's just
which story is it?
The glitches on 190. So the glitches is about the first computer. The first computer ever created was created for the atomic bomb because they had the danger of the high level drop. They had to use a computer to calculate where they dropped to where it would land. Just because of the danger of the bomb. The first bomb one of the bombs they went to drop on, I don't know if it's Nagasaki or Hiroshima. I'm sure they did it for both. They didn't even arm that damn thing until they got over target because they didn't know what the hell it was going to do. The Trinity test, that damn thing was 10 times bigger than they thought it was going to be. I mean, this is what they were dealing with back there. I'm trying to... I don't think it's the glitches. There's one where you'll see nuclear. It talks about 3 Mile Island. It talks about Geiger counters. You got all these keyword references to nuclear atomic stuff. So when I had to come all the way back to the beginning and I started chasing Albert Einstein again, and I said, but he's the star of this crap. So I went over to Jersey and I said, this thing's got to be in Jersey. So over there is where Princeton was. There's a couple statues of Einstein, where he used to live. And then I had to dig deeper. I mean, so deep. And it was like Thomas Paine. And I was like, I've heard of Thomas Paine, but I don't. Thomas Paine's also connected to the Revolutionary War. And he's actually considered, that park in Manhattan wasn't even named after him until 1977 because he basically had burned all his bridges with people. He was super famous and popular, but he was a do-gooder. He didn't go along with... he always stuck up for the little people. He's kind of like a Trump character. You know, that'd be a good comparison. And I said, damn, is there a Thomas Paine Park in Manhattan? Boom. And it's in the only park in 1980 or 81 or possibly 82 when he buried this. The only safe park in Manhattan was Thomas Paine Park because it's outside the courthouse. Every other park would have got you killed from what these people were telling me. Like every damn park that this one guy said, every park in Manhattan did not have a name. They were all called Needle Park. Every single damn one of them. The people just said, don't go to Needle Park. There was drugs everywhere. So when you bring all that back to the verse and you have a topic and you have the fairies and I actually have the person. And there's a ton of parks in New York, Manhattan, Brooklyn, all the boroughs. So in the shadow, so breaking it down simple, the Cold War is basically, the Cold War was still going on. You know, that really didn't end until Ronald Reagan ended it. So with the time this book's release, we were still in the Cold War. And when Byron grew up, he was one of them kids in school where they were still diving underneath the desks, plain and simple. You know, we had fire drills when I was in elementary school in the 70s. Byron, he was old enough to be my father. They were having nuclear drills at school. You know, like the damn desk was going to save them.
Hey, Eric.
But when
3 Mile Island is mentioned in Werner von Browning.
Yeah, because it also connects to New York. And that's the rockets and all that. And even, list NASA's part of the nuclear program. You know, when they converted all that junk over, that's all they did was take damn rock. It was the same exact technology that they strapped the warhead on, was the same technology they strapped the astronauts on. It was pretty much the same thing. And it's Chinese in that story because rocket fuel was just a progression of science from gunpowder, which was invented by the Chinese, and fireworks, the first explosive stuff. And if you want to
So let me.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to interject. If you look at the spotter's tip in Werner von Browning, it to me it's not like Spirit of 76, which is very specific, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it says the spotter's tip for Werner von Browning. I've got that up on the screen here, running off George's site. But it's postponed. So spotter's tips for Werner von Browning, which you're connecting to New York. That's fine. I have no problem with that. Probably connects to Florida because Florida's mentioned in here.
Yeah.
All right. Postponed countdowns, unexpected setbacks, unavoidable budgetary overruns, and of course, huge fireballs are all indications that the Werner von Brauning's program is right on schedule.
Yep. That's
There's nothing in there that says like here's how to find the box, or here's where the box is, or here's a general, nothing. So this is where
that spotter tip targets Florida. And see,
but it's just not so. So this is the
European about it.
This is the problem with the spotter's tip, and I think why some people have not looked at this in New York is it's not consistent. This is a very amorphous. You can't really derive. I don't think you can't really derive where the box is from here. Maybe you can, and I just missing it. But in New York, this is
go to the third paragraph of the habits and read that. This nuclear family of fairies loves to invite Adam, spelled Atom, out to play. There you go. There's nuclear and atom right there. And that is exactly how you're. And where's that going to connect? Where's 3 Mile Island? That's a clue to New York City right there alone.
Yeah, so he's intertwining these stories and all that's all fine and good. So my only thing, right, the only way I'm bringing this up is in New York, the stories that we can put all of our chips on and say these absolutely relate to New York. Spirit of 76 and Wooly Bully, maybe, anyway, those two for sure. In there happens to be a very specific clue about location and orientation. Here, no. So this is where all these puzzles, I think, are somewhat different. They have commonalities. But why are people missing this in New York with the stories that absolutely relate to New York? It's because the spotter's tips, it's like everyone would just go to the spotter's tip and try to cheat that way. But he's not letting you do that. In New York, though, he seemingly is giving us a very specific clue.
He's giving a very specific clue in 3 Mile Island. Now what happened at 3 Mile Island?
Not in Wooly Bully and Spirit of 76. In this one, yes.
Hey, so in the Wooly Bully, is it just the picture, or is it what it says too?
There was a nuclear accident 3 Mile Island, March 28, 1979.
Yeah, I remember that. So Douglas, to your question,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean the pictures in both of those stories are clearly taken in New York.
But what is it? How about the stuff it says? Is there anything in there?
And see with the Wernher von Brownie, you can interpret it this both ways. The answer to these and other questions of the von Brownie more often than not take the form of a fireball. And that could be the fireball thrust coming out of the space shuttle, which was the vehicle, or the Saturn V rocket. But it also could be the fireball of an atomic blast. And the atomic blast is depicted in some of the illustrations. You just got to look hard for it.
I mean, in this Douglas, in this one in particular,
it's in the illustration by Pyrad. There's two clues in there to nuclear war. But let me get back to the verse. Where are we at on time here? We're an hour 35.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have to boogie in like 15. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I can stay on. All right. I'm good. Go.
So basically, in the shadow of the gray giant are just, there's Chicago, New York, Houston. They all share architectural references. Gray Giant is a building. That's Manhattan, where all the buildings are. Find the arm that extends over Slender Path. Slender Path, there's some streets in New York City that are less than 20 feet wide. And these, in Manhattan's history, these are the original farm paths and walking game trails that were actually on the island.
Why wouldn't he call them a narrow path? I mean, that's when you say narrow, that's typically the term you use.
Path. And that's what they were, even in New York's history, they're referred to as slender path. When people go, what are these narrow streets that only one damn car can go down? And then there's usually somebody parked on the side of them that makes it worse. They said those streets are called slender paths because that's where they were before they paved them.
Do you have a reference on that, Eric? I want to look that up.
Yeah, you can just search slender paths in New York. I think I'd search slender paths in Manhattan, and it referenced the street, and it actually said slender path. But they said those were the original animal trails, the trails the natives used, because they actually had farms out there. The natives did. They were growing stuff, so these were the paths they were using between the crops and everything. But they're still referenced to those streets, and people go, "Why are these damn buildings so close together?" I actually saw a few photos of one on that research I was doing. In summer, I'm just thinking that's nuclear because summer's hot. I don't know. Okay. I mean, that's just summer. You have to hear the whirling. So a lot of this whirring is directly referenced to trains on the track. It's the sound they make when they make contact with the track when they're rolling. So subway, cars abound. You're close to traffic, which that's also used in St. Augustine. So St. Augustine with Wernher von Brownie is also connected to New York. So that's those two verses are basic. Cars are immediately around you, which is the entirely encompasses Thomas Paine Park. Though a sign nearby speaks of an Indies native. Okay, so the Indies native. This is Indies. This is East Wind in West Indies. This is a reference to the Dutch founding Manhattan, which is they were the East Indie. The West Indies is Britain. The East Indies were Dutch. So this is where I think he's sticking to the actual who first came there, traded with the natives. Speaks of an Indies native. That Indies native is going to be British. And that sign is basically the sign that says Thomas Paine Park. This is when you're already arriving here or you're doing the research. Okay. The natives still speak of him in hard words of three balls. And this is, the natives were the British that basically didn't like him. But his books were considered hard to read, and there was 3 volumes of them. They were actually pamphlets. American Crisis, Rights of Man, and Common Sense. Common Sense was here in America because Thomas Paine came from Britain because he didn't like Britain at all. Ben Franklin got him to come over here, and that's when he became famous, when he sold Common Sense. And that's why Common Sense is the book that basically spearheaded the Revolutionary War. This is where we're jumping back. Thomas Paine used to write when when George Washington gave speeches, Thomas Paine would sit there and write them down and give them to a horse carrier, and he'd take off to different cities and go, "Hey, this is what George Washington said. This is what he's doing." Common sense made him mega famous, but he still wouldn't back off. You know, when he died, he said, "All I have is my religion and the good I do." And he wrote a lot about how people were getting screwed. When you look at that one story, I don't know what it's called. It's the fairy's got the big bag on his back in depiction that he's just all weighted down. That's imagery you can use towards Thomas Paine. He constantly, even when he became famous and wealthy, he still talked about, you know, you guys are all my friends, but all you're doing is screwing the little people, and I can't stand it. And they were like, dude, you need to shut up. You're with us now. So eventually he got shunned, blacklisted, whatever you want to call it. And, you know, he died alone. But those in his, when you read Common Sense, it's hard to read because the words he uses and the way he writes it. And hard words are like rhapsodic. That's an example of a hard word. It's a word. If you've ever done crosswords and it goes, you drive this to work and you go, oh, car. Oh, wait, this thing's got 9 letters. It's not car. And you don't know it's automobile or whatever. You know, that would be a hard word. Oh, now I know what automobile also references a car. Take twice as many steps as an hour, which is going to be 120 from the middle of the V. So when you come up,
why 120?
Huh?
What? Why 120? Twice as many. The hour's 11. 2 times 11 is 22.
Or yeah, 22, whatever. It's just a simple little walking path. When you come up War Street and it splits with Century Street, it's a V. It V's off, so that's where you're at. And there, at that time, there was subway grates there, so you're going to hear the whirring. Cars are bound. This actually might be where you get out in a taxi or you cross the crosswalk right there. Okay. It says, okay, now when you walk that 22 steps, you're at the south end of Thomas Paine Park. You're walking up into Foley Square. In the Foley Square over on the right, looking north towards the rest of Thomas Paine Park, there's a wedding garden. Okay? So when you look down, you see simple roots. Marriage roots, laying down your roots. That's what he's using that word for. Simple roots, the start of your life with your bride, whatever you want to call it. In rhapsodic man soil. This is referencing the soil that's at the wedding garden. They had a big planter going all the way around it. And it was about the only place literally in that area that you could bury anything. There was 3 trees out there that had chains around them. And from what I could barely see in these photos, it looks like, you know, the roots were all coming out and everything. So they know where you could be. But when you're standing at this point and you're looking at it, you're basically facing east and you're facing that courthouse. And if that was a live photo that Ben Asen took, you'd be able to see yourself standing there. And see simple roots and rhapsodic man soil. That's the wedding garden. Or gaze north to your left towards the Isle of B. And when you get to that far end of the park, that whole park is Thomas Paine Park. But that bottom half turns into Foley Square, and in Foley Square is the wedding garden. So gaze north towards the Isle of B, Thomas Paine, because he is from the British Isles. That's why it's called the Isle of B. Okay. And it's as simple as that. As she's the bride in the Spirit of 76, the maitre d' if you look at any, you can go on Google right now, look up any wedding planner. It'll say John Smith maitre d' for a wedding planner. He's wearing a tux. You look on that page in the book where it shows all the fairies sitting on the steps. The maitre d's sitting right next to the Spirit of 76. And when I had that clue, I asked Joe Ellen, is this woman a bride? And even Ben Asen said it looks like a bride. And she said, oh, she didn't say yes or no. She said, oh, I just made that from some extra material I had on my desk. and I didn't ask her again, because when I said bride, she went, oh, crap.
Hey, let me go before Mark leaves.
All right, go.
All right. So I'm at Riverside Park. All right. In the shadow of the great giant, Ulysses S. Grant's tomb is gray, and it's the largest mausoleum in North America. All right. Across the street, is the Riverside Park, which is gray, and it's the largest church in New York. All right, so you're there already. You're already there at you're at his tomb. All right, find the arm that extends over the slender path. If you look up slender path, you'll find most of the things related to the Bible. Okay, if you go in and if you go into the dictionary, which I suggest everybody does, if you get stuck up on a word, go to the dictionary and find out if there's more definitions. So over the slender path, you'll find a lot of things to the Bible. In summer actually means in mass. If you go look at it, look it up. So
Nice. I already knew that.
It says if you'll often hear,
you're dead on. This is another path.
all right, so you'll often hear a whirring sound. Okay, so if you look at the Japanese clues, it says it has to be by the power of humans. It's by a machine. Okay, inside the church, you will find the organ, which is the largest organ in New York, whirs like constantly. All right, when it's on. Okay, it's a machine. It needs the power of humans to play it, though. And in summer, that means in church. Okay. And it says it's not underground neither in the Japanese things. Cars abound. There's always cars parked next to Riverside Park in that area. Okay. Although the sign nearby speaks of Indies native. Okay. There's a reason why Byron picked November. Okay. There's no way that he's not thinking about the Native Americans in November. It's Thanksgiving. Okay. So if he wants signs that are definitely going to be there, it's going to be Thanksgiving in November. Okay. The natives still speak of him of hard word and three voles. Okay. Three voles has been always said that voles are parts. Okay. So the name of the person that's the hymn of hard words has to have three parts in his name. Ulysses S. Grant. And nobody else knows, they don't call him Ulysses Grant. Everybody knows him as Ulysses S. Grant. Okay? And the natives still speak to him because he's very important in Native American history. He's the one that caused Mount Rushmore, which Teddy's on. Okay? And to this day, those people protest that he turned on them. Okay? Because he wrote it, they did a peace accord and he signed it. He said he wasn't going to mess with them and he took their land away. They hate him. Okay? Take twice as many east steps of the hour, which is 22 or more, because everybody's 22 steps ain't the same. So it might be 23, 24 from the middle of the branch of the V. Right there next to across from Riverside Park is a traffic V. It's been there for years. Okay.
Where's it, Douglas? I've got the aerial from 1980 up.
Go down. Go up to where Riverside Church is.
Is that up this way?
What side are you on for that?
Historic aerials, baby. Come on.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
go.
Go there. You go to Thomas Paine Park yet? Next. Now, let me answer this, guys. Scotty says, not saying the 76 is not New York, just wondering how you justify the pick if Easton suggested it, not BP.
Keep going.
From what I remember,
it's towards the north. Anyway,
well, the words from Ben's mouth were, Byron told me to take this picture from the Staten Island Ferry.
All right.
He didn't say.
I'm not done. I'll let you go.
All right.
All right.
Yeah.
Here's a traffic V.
Is that right here?
We're just trying, Douglas. We're just trying to answer a question someone asked.
Oh, the 76 one.
Yeah.
Is this it, Douglas? The traffic circle?
It's hard. You got to find the Riverside Church in his tomb.
I don't know where that is.
Yeah, that's right. That is really where Grant is buried.
Yeah, so you got to find that.
And you know what, Douglas? That is right across the street from that damn. It's right across the street from that
park
where that photo was taken.
Listen. Also, it's right across the street from the Japanese park that was supposed to be part of Riverside called Sakura Park, and it's a rectangle. Okay, just like that rectangle in the picture, and also it's there's more. So you go look at the V. And 22 steps from the V, you'll get to an area that is max away from Ulysses S. Grant's tomb, that it would be park area. Okay, and right across the street is where the theater is. All right, Gershwin lived on Riverside Park. He performed at that theater. You're at Rhapsodic soil. Okay, you gaze north toward the Isle of B. You gaze north, and that's Broadway. If you grew up in New York, there is a commercial in the 80s that played all the way to the 90s. It go rendezvous to the Isle of Broadway. It was very popular. Okay, I got more. If you got so people that want to go to the to Eric's site, I just dropped my volume 1 and volume 2. I got 100 connections to why this is Ulysses S. Grant. Questions?
And I got something to add to your Broadway there. I was just doing research here.
Yes.
What famous street in Manhattan started as an Indian trail when we were talking about slender paths, right?
There you go. Boom.
It says this street was originally the Wickquawsgit Trail, carved into the brush of Manhattan by Native American inhabitants. And what street is that? Broadway.
Listen, and also
Broadway is also where the office of. Go ahead.
Mark asked who was more important in immigration than Von Briesen. All right. I'm going to tell you, and most people don't know this, and you can go look it up. Immigration to this country, and specifically every single ferry, is due to Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant was the first president to travel to every country. Every single one.
That's
the
right.
first guy ever. He is specifically known for helping and talking out about the Jews in Prussia. Byron's family came over on the immigration wave caused by Ulysses S. Grant's support of Jewish people. He appointed more Jewish people than anybody ever. During the Civil War, he made a mistake and threw all the Jews out of the territory because his father messed up, and he got angry, and they held it against him. And that was
he was also
that was the biggest regret of his life.
He was the first president to ever visit Ireland.
Yes,
but he was a Scotsman, and Ireland gave him an honorary citizenship. That's why Chicago is Irish Scottish.
He's the first president to go to Israel in the Holy Land. He's the first president to go to Russia and Prussia.
Yeah, he went
everywhere. He's connected to every single ferry.
And he was world famous.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I think all these ferries have a little connection in every single puzzle.
Absolutely. You want George Washington? George Washington originally wanted Ulysses S. Grant's where his tomb is. He wanted the Capitol to be there. Okay. They lost the Battle of Harlem in that spot. The biggest Washington's loss, the biggest loss in Revolutionary War history, and the actual cause for Washington to go across the Potomac and actually win the damn thing. So it's connected to the Revolutionary War.
What's that?
So go to Century Street. We're gonna cut this off in about 8 minutes. Mark, if you just want to hang out.
So anyway, I think the church, as best I can tell, is up here.
Yeah,
right?
That's how I found Grant's tomb. I was in that church doing research.
Oh, wait a minute, no.
Right outside on Google Earth, and I was like, "Hell, there's Grant."
Can you zoom in?
And I was like,
"Zoom in." Hey, no, you can't.
Actually, yeah, I can.
All right, let's go.
So I think.
And what year is that? I can't read that. Is that 2000?
No, 1980. So I think the
Look
church
at it. It's right there. It's right there.
Yeah.
B.
So where's your V? Right here?
Yeah,
you see it
right there? I see it.
Yep. There's actually two of them. There's actually two of them. There's another one down there.
So what does that look like today? Oh,
it's
yeah.
A V.
You got like a roundabout in the middle of all that.
Same thing. Same thing.
Just a bunch of trees.
Yeah. Actually, you're actually protected. Yep, you're actually protected when you're digging it. There's actually another there's a thing over there that I don't know what it holds, but it's made out of stone and it's gray, and you can actually go behind it. I'm not sure if it's there where you got to dig, but you're kind of protected a little bit. So, but there's a V there. 22 things. You're at the Rapsidic soil, easily.
And Google Earth,
I don't know.
Earth used to have that feature, and they don't have it anymore. So that's why I'm interested to see you actually got it. Yeah,
So that's
there's no pictures of this. I got one. I think it was taken in 2000 before they tore everything down. But everything's at distance, that part.
so there's Foley right there, I believe, Eric, in 1980.
That's Thomas Paine on the bottom. Foley's on the top. Foley Square's at the bottom. You can see that little area right there. Is that as far in as you can zoom?
That's it.
Okay, that's Thomas. Now go down. That's the bridal garden right there where those bushes are. Right where the logo is. Yeah, you can't see crap. But see that delete road right there? That road is in the photograph of the small business man. There's two buses on it, but that street was deleted in 1993.
Okay.
You can see there's only 3 trees down there.
Mm-hmm.
But that road separates Thomas Paine, and yeah, look what they did. They just freaking destroyed it. But that happened. Go to the year 2000. You'll see the actual construction when they KO it. I don't remember what. There's no pictures. I see 2002, and then it goes to 97. So I guess they didn't take no photographs of it. Yeah,
right,
see how it looks today with the arm all stick. When I first saw that, I said, "Oh man!" And then when I realized that's new construction.
Yeah,
and it's not far from Broadway. But Lady Justice is up there. That's where Ben Asen took that photo. And I know in that photo, from what I remember, I know the only other building is you wouldn't get that angle, but I remember Ben Asen saying that in that photo from the steps, Byron said he wanted the World Trade Center in there, and he said from that spot I couldn't get that angle, but I see that this is the great part of some of his photos, especially for New York. Obviously he didn't tell Ben Asen why he was sending him there, but he was having, in my opinion, Ben Asen was taking a photo of exactly where the cast was. And he said from that angle, he couldn't get the World Trade Center, but Joe Ellen said the puppet's a lawyer, but of course that's another clue because that's the courthouse. And Thomas Paine Park, Foley Square, they even did an 80s TV show after that. That's where everybody went and sat for lunch. But that's the only park that you weren't screwing around in that park because of the courts and all that, even in those days where all those Manhattan parks were trashed. And I took that into account. I said, this is really the only safe park he could have buried anything and got people to go dig at that, Of course, you probably weren't there during days on court, but you could probably mingle around in there and nobody really paid any attention. But the final clues are the maitre d', which the maitre d' also has to do with the restaurants. And in New York, I think on Fifth Avenue at 57th Street, there used to be a French Italian restaurant that had a huge wine bar, and that is where General Leslie Groves met all the scientists to hire them for the Manhattan Project. You can go to the Manhattan Project. There's a website where you can read interviews, and then one guy said, Leslie Groves did not like Italian or French cuisine, and he didn't drink. So I thought that the restaurant was a goofy place for him to invite me to dinner. But once yeah, nothing. The guy said he would just talk. I guess he was sizing everybody up. And then the guy says, we left the restaurant and they walked down 57th to 58th Street. And he said, that's when Leslie Groves pitched, hey, we want you to come work on this top secret project to develop the atomic bomb. And then when they came back around, And I mean, the movie came out. A lot of people couldn't see it, and but I read stuff about so Berkeley is right across from San Francisco. That's where Oppenheimer was. Albert Einstein was making secret trips there. And people don't really know why he was going to Berkeley, but he was gone and that's what he was doing there. He was, I think, because Einstein's background, I don't think people would have just trusted him, but obviously, they had to use, Einstein's even depicted in the movie. He wasn't really a big fan of them using his theories to create something of mass destruction. But even in the movie, they said this is the biggest event the world's ever seen, and that's exactly what it is, even to this day. Yeah. There's nothing has, and it all started with the Germans. See, but the Germans in the history, which is also depicted in the movie, the Germans were behind in their research because they did not want to use the Jews. That was a big part of it. They didn't want to use the Jews. They were using their own people. And, they had been working on it longer, but they didn't have the right people there to do it. So,
they're running out of money too.
Yeah, once Oppenheimer at Trinity, which is depicted in the movie, the second they did a successful detonation, it shows Killian, the actor, he comes in there and he's like, what's going on? They're taking all their stuff. And they're basically, you built it, you detonated it, it worked. Now, get the hell out of here. We don't need you no more. And
hey, Eric,
it was over. What's up?
So if Thomas Paine, he's your guy.
Yep.
So one of the problems I see with that is he died in 1809. Yep. So he was not a contemporary of Teddy Roosevelt at all. Doesn't Wooly Bully tell us that
I did not use Teddy?
You don't.
I because when you look at the God, I was just looking at that too. When you look at the Wooly Bully, look where the areas of concentration are. And I know if you know everything you know about Wooly Bully, I know you know Wooly Bully, Wyoming, Wisconsin, New York. What do those three states have in common with Teddy? Wisconsin's where he got shot in the back of a car. We know the car is connected to Milwaukee. We know his history in New York, and we know his history in Wyoming.
Well, specifically, if Wooly Bully relates to New York, he tells us in here that the Wooly Bully was his mascot. So that tells you that this guy was alive, the Wooly Bully was alive when Teddy Roosevelt was.
Well, the book tells you to find a descendant of the Wooly Bully. But some of these stories, I mean, a lot of people, they don't, some of these stories in The Secret and some of these paths you take, all you're doing is learning something.
No, it says it is assumed that the Wooly Bully is of Teutonic origin and that he descended from the dwarf so dear to Wagner, which is the German aspect. So he's not saying so. But this says right here that it says right here he is he's served as a company mascot for Teddy. So if you believe Wooly Bully relates to New York, which I do, I don't think there's any question. This is describing a person related to the New York puzzle. And therefore, that person needs to be a contemporary of Teddy. Now, it just so happens, Von Briesen not only was a contemporary of Teddy, he was a close friend of Teddy.
I know. But
do you think that's
two sides of this book? You have people that are associated to the book, but not particularly associated to the puzzle. A lot of Byron was a teacher. A lot of this stuff is exactly what we're doing. I mean, stuff you're telling us about Teddy, stuff he was just talking about Grant up in New York. We're all learning stuff.
But Grant isn't in this. Teddy is in here.
I've chased.
That's my point.
I mean, if you look at it and you see what other president had facial hair and wore glasses and happened to be Teddy Roosevelt's favorite president, you'll find it's Ulysses S. Grant.
Okay, but Grant isn't in Wooly Bully. Teddy is.
All right. You'll also find that that's not the only Theodore Roosevelt. His father was Theodore Roosevelt, and he was under Grant in the Civil War.
Well, but in here it talks about the Rough Riders. Though. It talks about the Rough
I mean,
Riders.
you can't have. So you can't have. I don't think my opinion is you can't have Theodore Roosevelt be so important in Charleston, and then he's so important in New York. I don't see that how he would do that every time. You're gonna find another state that he's so important in.
Teddy's one of the 4 most important presidents in American history. That's why he's on Mount Rushmore.
Well, yeah,
Well, look, I'll
just look at that people that are there.
Well, look, Teddy. All right, come back to right. You got to use logical reasoning in this, and you got to keep it simple. I think Wooly Bully relates to New York City. Period. End of story. I won't debate that with anybody. If somebody believes that this story with 2 pictures of New York and Teddy Roosevelt, the president, Teddy Roosevelt, if someone says that I don't believe that Wooly Bully relates to New York, then we can't go anywhere. Okay, but if you agree that leap that I'm making, that this relates to New York, I don't see how it can relate to anything other than New York.
I believe it's a clue to New York and nothing more.
Yeah, it can still relate to New York and not mean what you're talking about.
Well, but it says it's describing the Wooly Bully. It's giving you where the guy was born, his heritage, that he was friends, and so close of friends with Teddy that he was his mascot. I'm just saying, like, as it turns out, geographically, if you use the clues as I've described, which I don't think is a leap, you end up on the doorstep of Von Briesen Park. Von Briesen matches the Wooly Bully to a T.
See, we're back to this thing where if I kick out the Theodore Roosevelt, stick, your whole theory falls over.
You can't though. He's right in here. Teddy Roosevelt, Rough Riders.
Your stuff relies on Teddy Roosevelt. One thing.
Look, we all 3 had 3 completely different interpretations of this. I mean,
well, I'm using what's here. What I'm saying is, if you're using Grant, I don't see Grant in this. I see Teddy Roosevelt.
Yeah, in that one thing.
Yeah, well, but this is right from Byron. This is right from Byron. He doesn't say Grant. He's saying Teddy.
Teddy is
but that could just mean New York.
Teddy has a direct connection with FDR. And
I don't see FDR in here. I see Teddy.
These are different timelines. They're 5th cousins, but Teddy was already dead when FDR did what he did.
All the Roosevelts are connected to each other.
Payne was already dead when Teddy did what he did.
You can connect that. This is what I call going off the board. The board shows me Teddy. The board shows me Teddy.
Revolutionary War and Civil War. Okay? So, Thomas Paine, Revolutionary War. Teddy, what war? Teddy is connected to Milwaukee because he almost got assassinated there. That's why the Wooly Bully says Milwaukee. New York, because Teddy was mayor, governor, police chief.
I don't see Milwaukee.
FDR was also governor. They were also related.
Like I'm just using what's here. I'm not going off the board to make a connection. That's what I'm saying. And so when you talk about the likelihood of something being a real clue and a connection, I'm using exactly what's here, and I'm not going off the board to something that isn't here. That's my point.
Yeah, but you gotta follow anything in that Wooly Bully needs to be researched. Any kind of keyword. I saw the heck was it I looked up in the Wooly Bully?
But he's a perfect fit for Von Briesen. This is describing Von Briesen, where he's from, the language. The language he speaks.
He's not a very known guy. Von Briesen wouldn't have been readily available in 1981.
Hang on.
You just can't go to Google and look up Von Briesen. There really isn't nothing on Von Briesen. So if you went in any other state, you were never going to find Von Briesen.
I mean, you're going to have to do like the Wooly Bully. You got words in here. Right-wing Trog, the Pentagorgon. You're going to have to go to all those stories and look for Teddy. Trilateral Commission, Caribbean Islands. embargoes, socialist dictatorships. You can relate every single bit of that. The Pentagon, the ferry's the Gorgon, but it's the Pentagon. What's the Pentagon for? War, Caribbean islands.
It seems very
Embargoes,
clearly that could be
socialist
true, but
dictators.
it says that where is this guy from? It says very clearly where is he from.
New York.
So you better have a guy. No, it's Teutonic origin. It says he's Prussian, and since Prussia was such a big area and it encompassed many different peoples and languages, he says in here he's Prussian, i.e. Teutonic, and descended from the Germans. So the guy spoke German. He was Prussian and spoke German. Find me another guy who, and now it just so happens that when you geographically use the orientation that Byron gives us, you end up in this park next to a park of a guy who perfectly fits his description. So that's why I like this, because I don't have to go and make any other,
But
connections.
he would have to be in the book. You'd have to learn every single thing about that guy. And where was he born? Where did his family come from?
Bergendorf, Prussia.
Prussia. So
Yes.
Prussia would be today. Prussia would be what?
Well, he was born at Borkendorf, which is actually part of Poland now, but back then it was German. He spoke German.
So
That's
you okay. So
it's exactly who's described here.
You have to search every single German story in the book to find a clue to him. If you don't, he's not it. That's a great example that I want to use.
There's three things here. The guy was Prussian, spoke German, and very good friends with Teddy. It's all right here in the story. I don't have to go off the board for it. So that's the only reason why I like this.
But like I found out many times when I chase one person, I go, there's more. I missed something. He could have a connection to this, connection to that. It could shoot off in a different direction. It might just be a dead end, and you go, this is a dead end. I learned all this great. Now I got to go back where I started.
But if you're in New York and you think Wooly Bully relates to New York City, which I do, who is your Wooly Bully then? Who is your Prussian who spoke German and was good friends with Teddy? He's describing him here.
The German is World War II German, their attempt to build the atomic bomb, and the German, who's Albert Einstein, that told FDR about it, with inspiration of Thomas Paine, the Brit, and with that connection, that's the park he used, because there is no Albert Einstein Park. We know we're looking for a park, so it's going to be named after a person. That's a big, easy one. But that's how you use the ferries. Who were the ferries in the New York story? FDR, he's American-born president, but he's of British descent. Albert Einstein, German. Thomas Paine, British. And immediately Thomas Paine, he is from the British Isles. He's not from Wales. He's not from any. He is from the Isle of Bee, which is what it's called for short. And there's even history where he went over there. He was over there, and that's when Ben Franklin came over there and said, you don't like being here, come to freaking America. And, he's got French connection. He went to France and tried to get them to revolt against their king and almost got thrown in for jail. Thomas Paine went to Canada with Ben Franklin and tried to convince them, Canadians, to help the 13 colonies fight the British. And they said, oh, no, that's not happening. And Thomas Paine tapped, Ben Franklin on the shoulder and said, hey, we better get the hell out of here before they arrest us. There's a lot of crazy.
I got a boogie, but I just point out spotters.
We all gotta go. We got just hang on a second. I'm gonna Sarah, thank yous, and we're gonna get out of here. We're gonna do this again next week if everybody can get back together.
I'll be here.
Everybody watching, we're 2 hours 15 minutes, and we'll see y'all next time. Everybody say goodbye.
Adios.
Bye. Hey, go to the page. I got 100